All right, guys. Lion Witch Narcissist here. I should just be like LWN. Before I get into like the rest of the story here, I just want to like apologize to you guys if the visuals. I know it's not that, I'm just using the same thing over and over again. I edit these on my phone and in iMovie, and I'm not using like anything fancy. And it's just, it's not about what we're looking at, it's about what we're hearing. So that's the reason why I just keep using the same, video over and over again, because it's just easier that way for me. And, really there's not much to see. It's more about what we're talking about. So that was that. So I want to get into the next part of the story. And this is the part where everything collapsed and just kind of fell apart. And this was the turning point. It was a pivotal moment in the whole thing. So now they're engaged, and there's this day that my mom asked my husband and my brother to come over by her house. She needed to move furniture because she was getting her floors refinished. So, my husband meets my brother at the house, and she comes with him, Satan, my brother's wife. That's what I call her, in case you guys haven't been following along or haven't seen the previous videos, which I would suggest doing, because this isn't going to make sense. So my brother, they go, and I had actually had a appointment with a therapist that day. So I was at the therapist's office and talking, and then by the time I got out, I was going to head over by my mom's, but my brother, my husband called me and told me he had left. So he's like, your brother brought Satan with him. And I'm like, really? And what'd they have to say? So he starts telling me that, she's talking, she has her whole list. And when they first got engaged, they were talking about getting married the following year in the summer. So, so anybody that was doing anything, we had a whole year to prepare for a wedding, which is, pretty much the norm, I would think, a year or two. So what happened was, all of a sudden now, she went from having it June the following year to now being in, trying to think, from June to now being February of 2014. So they got engaged in, I believe it was like late September, maybe mid-October. And then their wedding was already in February. So it was like a couple of months, So she just figured like she didn't want to give my brother too much time, because then he could back out. And maybe she just knew that she couldn't hold this facade up for too long, The facade that I saw right through, but my brother was obviously blinded by, because he's being love bombed, I wasn't. So anyway, they pushed the wedding up. So she's over at the house that day with my brother. My brother and my son, my husband, Jesus. So they're helping move the furniture, and she has her whole wedding list, and she's like talking nonstop, about the wedding, this and that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. She had the whole wedding planned out. They had just gotten engaged, maybe 2 weeks prior to this, a week prior. And she had the whole wedding already planned out, like in full detail. So my husband, when he called me, he's like, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, your brother asked me to be the best man." And I'm like, "Really?" Like that, to me, that was weird for several reasons. The first being that, my brother and my husband, like, they talked to one another, but they never really hung out. They didn't, like, talk on the phone or anything. Like, they didn't have that kind of close relationship that you would, somebody that you would pick for a best man. Like, usually that would be a family member or, like, some lifelong friend or something, So that was a little strange. The other thing that struck me, odd about it a little bit was the fact that usually when my husband had to ask my brother usually when my brother would ask my husband to do things, he would always kind of like consult with me first. He would call me up and just be like, "Hey, kind of just to like run it by me, see what I thought." Because he asked my husband a lot of favors, especially when his ex moved out. We had a pickup truck, so we were like, he bought like 3 couches. First he bought one from the thrift store, then he got one from like, a real furniture store. So we were like driving these freaking couches all over the place. It was just crazy. And even when they moved, him and his ex, they moved from one apartment to another. We helped them move. We moved all their stuff, So I just felt it was kind of weird that he didn't call me first, but whatever, no big deal. Maybe he just didn't, thought I would say something or whatever. So then my husband's like, "Here's the weird part though." And I said, "What?" And he goes, you're not in her bridal party. And I'm like, what? I was like, well, at first I was like, good. He was like, that's really fucked up. And I'm like, it didn't really hit me right away because my first thought was like, good, I don't really I couldn't care for this person. I could see she was kind of bossy and I knew some information about her by this point. So I was kind of happy about it, because I was like, ugh, I don't want to spend any more time with this person than I have to, So, but my husband's like, that's like really fucked up. Like the sister, should be in the bridal party. And I kind of thought about it and I'm like, he is right though. Like it is fucked up, And I had mentioned it to my mom and I told her, I'm like, it's really fucked up that like they're not having me in the bridal party. And, she didn't think it was that weird, my mom. And I don't know if she didn't think it at first or I don't know. I don't know. So, so whatever. Did think it was fucked up. Let's just put it that way. So now time goes on and I think it was like a week or two, a couple weeks goes by. And I decide to buy, I'm in the mall one day and I'm just kind of walking around, browsing around, and all of a sudden I see this dress at this store called BB. And I really love that store. It's like one of my go-to places if I'm looking for a dress. So I go there and I see this dress and I really liked it. So I go try it on and, I just really liked the way it looked. And here it is. It's February. They're having a February wedding, It was Valentine's Day, which is so just lame. I mean, no offense if you got married on Valentine's Day. I just think it's like, ugh, like who wants that, I don't know. And it's like so cliche. Like, I don't know. I just, not for me. So anyway, I saw the way I had just lost pretty much the bulk of my baby weight. I was feeling a little bit better about my body and everything. And, it was couple of months after I had my son. So I was feeling, a little bit better. And I really liked the dress. I liked the color. It was Valentine's Day, so whatever. The other thing, and I just want to preface this by telling you guys this. I used to work with a wedding photographer. I've been to, hundreds of wedding venues. So many. In our area, and we're in New York, so we live by Manhattan. I mean, I've been to weddings, really formal weddings. Like this one wedding I remember we did at the Yale Club, where you have to be a graduate of Yale to even have a wedding here. And I mean, beautiful place. The bride had a $3 million Harry Winston necklace on, and she was carrying a parasol from Buckingham Palace. Just really upscale, wedding. I've been to so many different kinds of weddings, places. The place where my brother and her were getting married, I had been there tons of times. That one's really local, more close to where I live. And to me, it's not that formal. It's not that fancy of a place. It's a nice place, but I took that into consideration that this isn't a formal wedding. And I also took into consideration that this is her third wedding, It's I know it's my brother's first, but it's her third. And, let's just face it, the weddings are usually more about the bride than they are the groom. And, so I didn't think she was going to put all her friends and family through a third wedding and make it this big ordeal, So I bought this dress, not thinking. And I showed you guys a picture of the dress in the first video that I posted, which was a conversation. If you guys want to see it, go link it below. I mean, go, take a look at it below. Or I'll leave a link on my blog to show you guys a picture. So anyway, I was like, whatever, pick this dress out. So one night, and it was the same day that I actually went and got the dress, my brother calls me and asked me if I wanted to do a reading at the wedding. And I was just like, I found out my mom had kind of said something to him about not putting me in the wedding party, which I told her not to, but she did anyway. And I was kind of pissed off about it. So their solution was to have me do a reading. I'm not really big on, public speaking or talking in front of large audiences. So, when he asked me, I was kind of well, I mean, I was I don't know. I don't really like doing those, but if I have to, I will, if you really want me to, I will. That's what I said. So he, so whatever. So while we're in conversation, I tell him, oh, by the way, I got a dress. And he's like, oh, really? Oh, you got a dress? I hear him kind of repeating it. So I'm like, yeah, I got a dress. So he's like, oh. So then I'm going to change the subject, and all of a sudden he goes, where'd you get it from? And I was like, I had him on speakerphone, and me and my husband kind of looked at each other, and we were like, what? That's a weird question coming from him, If you know my brother, he, first of all, he's not one to even, really inquire about things that he's not really interested in, especially girl stuff. And the other thing is that he would never be interested in what I was wearing. I mean, I used to bring him clothes shopping because he has no idea what to put on his own body. So you think he's going to be worried about my body, you know? So I'm like, I got it at BB. So he's like, oh. So he's like, then I could hear her in the background too. So I hear her go, all of a sudden he goes, oh, what color is it? And that was when me and my husband looked at each other like, what the fuck? I pull it out of the bag, and as I'm looking at it at home, it looked more like a pinkish color. At the store, it was like purple. It was like a maroony kind of, I don't know, burgundy color, I guess. And when I got home, it was, it just looked a little bit different. So I was trying to explain that to him, and then, he was like, oh, okay. And then we changed the subject, start talking about everything, something else. And then 2 seconds later, he goes, what color was that dress again? So at this point now, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with it? What is this fucking guy's problem? So me and my husband look at each other, and I'm like, what are you, scared I'm going to wear the same dress as you or something? Like, like, what's with all these questions about my dress? And he's like, oh, I just want to know, I'm just asking. And I know that it's her. I know that she probably, my brother had me on speakerphone, and most likely it's her who's asking all these questions. I just know my brother, and I don't think he would ever give a shit about any of those things. So anyway, time goes by now, and it's probably about 3 weeks later. And, I wasn't talking to him much in this time. Like, I didn't see him. He didn't, he wasn't hanging out. And which I was okay with, but it was kind of weird. Like, we used to talk a lot. And now it's like I never hear from him, and she really occupies his time. So about 3 weeks goes by now, and I'm like, not even, thinking about anything. And all of a sudden, my brother shows up at my house again. It's always some like crazy news that he has to give me. Like, they got engaged and moving in, whatever. I'm like, let me guess, she's pregnant. Like, in my head, that's what I'm thinking. So he comes to my house, he sits down. I'm like, my son was napping. So, I asked him if it was all right if we sat outside. It was nice weather, whatever. So we're sitting out there, and he's, again, entranced on his phone. Like, just completely in his own world, talking to her, texting back and forth with her, not even like looking at me or really like responding. And I hate to say this, but it's the truth. My brother usually doesn't come like over unless he wants something, or like I said, like if he has news. Like, for him to just show up to hang out and, bullshit, that's not really that normal. So I was, kind of the whole time in my head, like, all right, what are you here for? Thinking, what is it? So, whatever, he's texting her. She works for an insurance company. So she was at some event in the city, and, with like basketball players or whatever, the Knicks or something like that. He's selling her insurance. So I was like sitting there like thinking, what the hell is he doing here? And I'm trying to talk to him, and he was so into the phone that he's not even like acknowledging anything I have to say. And at one point, I think I actually was like, said something, and I was like, I don't know why I'm even bothering saying anything, because it's not like you're listening to me, So yeah, so that was that, So while he was there, and I thought his wife maybe had some problem with the color of my dress, which I thought was weird anyway, because I'm like, I'm not in her bridal party. Why was she so like, curious about my dress and what color it was and what store I got it from and yada, yada, yada. So I asked I got in my head, I was like, you know what, I'm going to pull the dress out. I'm going to show him, and, he could go tell her that whatever the color is, with his eyes, from his perspective. He's colorblind anyway, but whatever. At least he could like put her at ease. So I go in my house, I pull the dress out of my closet, and I bring it outside, and I go to show it to him, and he was on his phone, and it says, here's the dress. I said, here's the dress, and he looked up for about all of like 2 seconds. He looked down, he was just like, oh, nice. That was it. And then he looks right back down to his phone, and he's back to texting her, So I was like, okay. I held it up on a hanger above my head too, just to let you guys know, because this is a vital, detail. So I was like, whatever. So a couple of minutes later, I bring it back inside and hang it back in my closet. So, and we're bullshit, and he doesn't say anything about the dress. Then he shows me, I don't know, some picture of her with these basketball guys. I'm like, who gives a shit? I really don't even want to know anything about her, but whatever. So that was that, and then he left. So here's another big thing that happened while he was there. This is probably the reason that he came. I'm not really sure, but he came, And he started complaining about how my mom wasn't giving him money for the wedding. And I'm like, he's like, Satan's mom is giving money for the wedding, and, she should give me something, and da-da-da. And I'm trying to explain to him, like, first of all, traditionally, if parents are paying for the wedding, usually the bride's mother pays more or most of it or the whole thing, And I said, she didn't even offer me money. I was married already at this point, and I didn't even have a wedding because, my mom didn't offer me money. And so me and my husband would have had to pay for our wedding ourselves, and we just couldn't afford it. We didn't think it was practical to have this big wedding, when we have a house, and then I got pregnant. It just wasn't going to happen, So my brother, is sitting there complaining, and I'm like, you're such a bitch. Like, no, like, whatever. This is her third wedding. That's what I'm thinking in my head. So anyway, then the whole dress thing happens. So when he leaves, I call my mom up because I had to tell her. I'm like, this is fucking crazy. Like, with all this shit that, him getting upset about me asking about the engagement ring, and now he's mad at my mom for not giving money, and then, my dress, and like, what else? What other fucking problems do you people have? So he goes, I'm on the phone with my mom, and I'm telling her all this shit. And all of a sudden, I hear a text come over. So I tell her to hold on. I go read the text, and it's from him. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this now? I open the text up, and it's like, hey, I like your dress, but how long is it? And I'm like, what? I was like, is he fucking kidding me? How long is it? Like, how long do you think it is, So my mom was like pissed off. She's like, tell him you didn't measure it. Ask him if you're breaking the dress code. And that's exactly what I wrote to him. And he's like, well, usually at weddings, women wear, and then he starts giving me this whole lecture about what women wear at weddings, which, again, this is a person who needs me to pick his clothes out for him, but now he knows proper attire for, women at weddings. I'm like, he's telling me usually women's dresses are longer and they're below the knee. And so I tried to back him off nicely, but kind of firmly. Like, I was like, listen, you don't want to, he told me it's inappropriate. That's what he told me. And I'm like, listen, you don't want to get in a conversation with me about appropriate, and I know it's not you, so let's just not talk about my dress. So he's like, well, I was just asking for you to wear something more conservative, the groom of the sister to wear something, the sister of the groom to wear something more conservative for my wedding. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, whatever. We started going back and forth. And he's telling me, it looks like lingerie and that I'm going to be in his pictures. And, so I came back at him. I got fucking pissed. I'm offended. I'm like, first of all, I'm not in your bridal party. So if your wife wanted to, control what I wore, she should have put me in her bridal party. And then she wouldn't have to worry about what I'm wearing, because I'd be wearing one of the ugly bridesmaids dresses. Second thing is, I'm your sister. Like, is she that insecure and worried? Like, I'm your sister. It's not like I'm some ex-girlfriend who's showing up. It was just like so ridiculous. And those are the things I said to him. And he started bugging out. And then it just got so, crazy. Like, I told her, I told him, listen, if your wife has a problem with what I'm putting on my body, you could tell her to call me instead of going through you, and using you as her puppet. And what else did I say? I flipped out. And listen, was I right? No, I probably shouldn't have taken it as far as I did. I definitely went a little overboard and got a little, did a little overkill. But, it was a bunch of things that were kind of like adding up over time with her. And I was just like, enough's enough with this fucking girl already and her stupid wedding. It was like, I'm not going to sit here and walk on eggshells for anybody, So it turned into this whole big thing. And then I ended up like, you know what? I even told him that I could not return the dress. And I spent like $170 on it or something. And I told him I can't even return it. It's past the date that I could return the dress. I won't get my money back. And he was still insisting that I get a new dress at that point. And that's why I think I just flipped out and lost my shit. So it ended in me telling him, you know what? We don't, if you're going to like tell me what to wear, I don't need to come to your wedding. Neither does my husband. So did I think that would ever actually happen? No. I thought we would get in this little, heated thing, and then we would get over it and move past it like we always did. This isn't the first time me and my brother had some type of fight like this where we exchanged heated words with each other, We got into several fights over the years, and we always, found a way to move past it. But something was different this time. And the, common denominator is his wife. That's the factor that made it different. It's his wife. So I was like, all right, that was it. I didn't talk to him then after that for about, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Listen, it's so fucked up because, I think my dress was inappropriate? No. They were getting married in the church, in the place that they were having the reception. They weren't having a formal wedding. It was her third wedding. I'm taking all these things into consideration. And I didn't think it was that dressy of an affair. I wore stuff that I've worn to a million weddings before. He has seen me at tons of weddings before. This isn't the first time we went to a wedding. He's seen me at a million weddings before. That was another thing. Let me back up here. When we were fighting, because she took 3 months, I think it was about 6 weeks. My mom friend requested her on Facebook, and it took her 6 weeks to accept my mom's friend request. And she didn't accept it until like the day before they got engaged. So it's kind of like she knew about the engagement. But we looked through her Facebook, because we're like, who is this girl? She's very mysterious. She doesn't really talk about herself. She doesn't talk about her past. She doesn't talk to her own sister. So, what's this girl's story? So we're looking through her Facebook page out of curiosity because we don't know much about her. And she had several pictures of herself in dresses, very short dresses, very similar to what I was wearing and, or even shorter. And she has a curvaceous body. My body's, I have like the body of a 14-year-old boy, So I sent him a picture of one of the pictures off her Facebook of her in the dress. And I was like, what's the difference between this dress and my dress? Like, what makes this more appropriate than my dress? She's at a wedding. And of course, that was one of the arguments. Oh, she wasn't at a wedding. She was at a bridal shower. And meanwhile, I was like, really? There's guys there? Come on. So, it was just like, I just couldn't understand what the fucking problem was. If I wanted to wear a fucking chicken suit, you should have just been like, you know what? Sorry, that's my sister. She likes to wear chicken suits to weddings. Like, it's just like, who the fuck tells their guests what to wear at their weddings? Like, that's crazy. So, unless it's some like theme wedding, But anyway, I was just fucking pissed off, man. I was so aggravated by this point in time with this girl. Because I know it's not my brother. That's what got me more upset than anything else, was the fact that I know my brother. I know what he cares about, what he doesn't care about. And, I know how he does things. And this has been a problem for the last 4 years, that she seems to think like we don't know him and we don't know him any better. So we didn't talk now for about 4 months, I think. I don't even remember. 4 weeks or so. And finally, one day, he was fighting with my mom, he's fighting with me, and then finally one day, I don't know if it was him or he asked my mom to come over so they could talk. So my mom, and I'm going to end the video here in a second, but my mom went over there and she, I told her, I'm like, don't let them bully you, because she was really fucking pissed off about him with this money thing, going around complaining to people, So I said, don't let them bully you, stay firm. And she's like, because, I'm figuring you're going into their domain, So it's uncomfortable to begin with to be around her. And then now you have like some issue. So she goes over there and she tape recorded it. And obviously I didn't find this out till after, but she tape recorded it because she wanted to prove me wrong, that they weren't going to bully her and that she was going to stand her ground. So that is the next conversation that I have, which was the first time. And I want you guys to hear it. So I am going to do a video, let you guys hear that one, because that one's just like, forget it. Crazy. Before my mom went over there and got into this huge fight with them. And that's the next thing that I want you guys to hear. And, it's just crazy when you think about it, because my mom had only met her a handful of times at this point, when they had this fight. And so you guys are going to hear it and you guys are going to just be like, what the fuck? Because nobody, should talk to anybody's mother-in-law like that, let alone somebody's mother-in-law that they don't even really know that well, and only met a few times. And this goes together with the whole thing that she just did not want to make a good impression on us. I mean, that's really what it just comes down to. So you guys will be seeing that after this. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Please, subscribe, like my page, comment. The more likes you get, the more we spread this awareness about these fucking assholes. So, all right, guys.